Clara Whitmore's hands were covered in a dying man's blood when she made the decision that would change everything. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he'd been shot. She only knew that the same town that called her son a thief's bastard would let this stranger freeze to death in the snow. So she dragged him inside anyway. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. The bullet was still inside him. Clara Whitmore knew it the moment she cut away his frozen coat. The wound on his right side gaped angry and red, the flesh swollen around something metal. Blood seeped slow now, almost lazy, the way it did when a body was running out. "Mama." Her son Eli stood in the doorway, his 8-year-old eyes too old for his face. "Is he dead?" "Not yet." Clara pressed her palm against the wound. The stranger groaned but didn't wake. "Get Grandma. Tell her to boil water and bring my sewing kit." Eli ran. Clara looked at the man on her kitchen table. Strong jaw, weathered skin, maybe mid-30s. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His clothes were plain but well made. Working clothes. A cowboy maybe, or a ranch hand. His gun belt was empty. Someone had taken his weapon. Someone had shot him and left him to die. "Lord have mercy!" Ruth Whitmore appeared with a pot of steaming water, her gray hair pulled back tight. She took one look at the stranger, and her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Clara, we can't." "I already did." The town can go to hell." Ruth set down the pot. She didn't argue. 3 years of watching her daughter-in-law be spat on and shunned had taught her when Clara's mind was fixed. "Eli, go to your room," Ruth said. "I want to help. You can help by praying." Ruth's voice softened. "Go on now." The boy hesitated, then obeyed. Clara held her hands over the fire until they stopped shaking. The knife blade glowed orange. She'd done this before once, when a ranch hand got gored by a bull, and no doctor would come to the Whitmore farm. The man had lived. She'd vomited for an hour afterward. "Hold him down," she told Ruth. The old woman pressed her weight across the stranger's shoulders. Clara took a breath. The knife went in. The stranger screamed. His body bucked hard, nearly throwing Ruth off. Clara gripped the knife handle and dug deeper. Feeling for metal, her vision narrowing to just the wound. Just the blood. Just the thing that needed to come out. There. The bullet came free with a wet sound. She dropped it into a tin cup. It rang like a church bell. "Thread," she said. Ruth handed it over. Clara stitched the wound with fingers that had mended 100 shirts, 100 socks, 100 tears in her son's trousers. Just flesh. Just thread. Just another thing trying to hold together. When she finished, the stranger's breathing had steadied. His face was pale as milk, but his chest rose and fell in a rhythm that meant living. "Who is he?" Ruth whispered. "Don't know." "Where'd he come from?" "Found him against the barn door. Horse must have thrown him or run off. No tracks in the snow." Ruth stared at the unconscious man. "If people find out..." "They won't." "Clara, they won't." Clara wiped her hands on her apron, leaving red streaks. "Help me move him to the fire. He needs to stay warm." They dragged him to the hearth and covered him with quilts. Clara sat back on her heels, exhaustion hitting her like a wall. Outside, the blizzard howled. Inside, a stranger breathed. Ruth touched her shoulder. "You did good." Clara didn't answer. Good had nothing to do with it. She'd simply refused to let another person die in the cold. She'd had enough of cold deaths. 3 days passed. The stranger drifted in and out of fever, muttering names Clara didn't recognize. Thomas, Abigail. Should have been faster. The words came out broken, tangled with pain. Clara cooled his forehead with wet cloths. She spooned broth between his cracked lips. She changed his bandages twice a day, checking for infection, finding none. Eli watched from a distance, fascinated and afraid. What if he's a bad man? He asked on the second night. Then we'll deal with that when he wakes. What if he's a good man? Clara tucked the quilt tighter around the stranger's shoulders. Then we'll deal with that too. On the fourth morning, she was stoking the fire when she heard him speak. Where am I? Clara turned. The stranger's eyes were open, clear and blue, fixed on her face. Whitmore Farm, she said. 8 miles north of Bitter Creek. He tried to sit up. Pain twisted his features. Don't. Clara crossed to him and pushed his shoulder down, gentle but firm. You'll tear the stitches. What? What happened? You tell me. I found you half dead against my barn with a bullet in your side. The man closed his eyes. His jaw worked like he was chewing on something bitter. Don't remember, he said finally. I was riding. Heard a shot. Then, snow. Just snow. What's your name? He hesitated. Jessie. Jessie Hawkins. I'm Clara Whitmore. That's my mother-in-law Ruth by the stove. My son Eli's around somewhere. Jessie's eyes moved to Ruth, then back to Clara. You took me in. A stranger. You were dying. Most folks would have let me. Clara stood and wiped her hands on her apron. I'm not most folks. She went to the stove and ladled soup into a bowl. When she turned back, Jessie was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet. You still might die. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You always this cheerful? Only with men who bleed on my kitchen table. She handed him the bowl, their fingers brushed. Neither mentioned it. By the end of the week, Jessie could sit up without help. By the middle of the second week, he could walk to the outhouse on his own, though the effort left him pale and breathing hard. Eli's fear had transformed into fascination. He followed Jessie like a shadow, peppering him with questions. Were you ever in a gunfight? A few. Did you win? I'm still here, ain't I? Do you have a horse? Had one. Don't know where she went. I could help you look when the snow melts. Jessie glanced at Clara, who was kneading bread at the table. We'll see. Eli, Clara's voice carried warning. Let the man rest. But Mama, go feed the chickens. Eli slumped but obeyed. The door banged shut behind him. Jessie watched him go. Good boy. He is. Talks like he hasn't had much to talk to. Clara's hands stilled in the dough. The children in town don't play with him. Why not? Because his father was a thief. The words came out flat. Or so they say. Jessie was quiet for a moment. Was he? No. Clara resumed, kneading her movements harder now. William was the most honest man I ever knew. Worked this land with his bare hands. Never took a thing that wasn't his. Then why? Because Vernon Shaw wanted our water rights. When William refused to sell, Shaw had his men plant stolen cattle on our property. William was arrested. He died of pneumonia in jail before the trial. She slammed the dough against the table. They didn't even let me see him at the end. The fire crackled. Outside, Eli's voice carried faintly, talking to the chickens like they were old friends. I'm sorry, Jessie said. Don't be. You didn't do it. Still, a man shouldn't be remembered for something he didn't do. Clara looked at him, then really looked. His blue eyes held something she hadn't expected, understanding. No, she said softly. He shouldn't. Yeah. That night, after Eli was asleep and Ruth had retired to her room, Clara found Jessie on the porch wrapped in a quilt and staring at the stars. You'll freeze out here, she said. Needed air. He didn't turn. Your mother-in-law doesn't like me much. Ruth doesn't like anyone much. Don't take it personal. Clara leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed against the cold. The snow had stopped, leaving the world white and silent. You're healing well, she said. Good doctoring. I'm not a doctor. Could have fooled me. Jesse shifted, wincing slightly. Where'd you learn to dig out bullets? Necessity. No doctor in Bitter Creek will treat a Whitmore. Because of your husband. Because of Vernon Shaw. He owns half the town, including the doctor. He spreads the word, and the word becomes law. Jesse turned to face her. This Shaw, he still wants your land. He wants me gone. The land's just the excuse. Why? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Because I know what he did. I can't prove it, but I know. And as long as I'm here, there's a chance the truth comes out. That sounds like a dangerous position. It is. She met his eyes. That's why I'm warning you. Whatever you're running from, it's probably safer than what you've run into. Soon as you're well enough to travel, you should go. Jesse held her gaze. You want me to leave? No. The word almost escaped. She caught it just in time. I want you to live, she said instead. This farm isn't a place for living. Seems like living to me. Jesse gestured at the cabin, warm light glowing through the window. Boy who needs a father. Woman who needs... He stopped. Needs what? Someone who sees her. Clara's breath caught. You don't know me. I know you dragged a bleeding stranger out of a snowdrift. I know you dug a bullet out of him with a kitchen knife. I know you're raising a boy alone in a town that hates you and you haven't run. He paused. I know enough. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Who's Thomas? Clara asked softly. Jesse flinched like she'd struck him. You called his name, she continued. In the fever, Thomas. And Abigail. He turned back to the stars. His jaw was tight, his hands gripping the porch railing hard enough to whiten his knuckles. Thomas was my partner, he said finally. Deputy Sheriff. We worked together in Montana 4 years back. He was a good man, better than me. What happened? Got killed, shot in the back by a man I should have seen coming. Jesse's voice cracked. I was right there, 10 feet away, and I froze. Just for a second, but a second was enough. Thomas went down and I... He didn't finish. Clara waited. I killed the man who did it, Jesse said. Doesn't matter. Thomas was still dead. His wife, Margaret, she told me she never wanted to see my face again. Said I was a coward. Were you? I don't know. He laughed bitter and short. Maybe. I've been running ever since. 2 years of running. And Abigail? Jesse's whole body went rigid. Abigail was my sister. Something in his voice made Clara's chest tighten. She married young, 16. A man named Carter seemed decent enough, but he wasn't. Jesse's hands were shaking now. He hurt her. I knew. I saw the bruises. But Carter was my friend, and when he said she was clumsy, when he said she exaggerated, I believed him. Clara felt sick. She wrote to me. 3 letters, begging me to help. I kept telling myself I'd handle it, kept putting it off, kept believing it wasn't as bad as she said. He swallowed hard. Last letter came 6 months before Thomas died. Carter had broken her arm. I was finally going to confront him. What happened? Carter killed her. The words fell like stones. Beat her so bad she didn't wake up. By the time I got there, she'd been in the ground a week. Clara reached out without thinking and touched his arm. He didn't pull away. I didn't save Thomas because I froze, Jesse said. I didn't save Abigail because I was a coward. Margaret was right. I'm not worth the air I breathe. That's not true. How would you know? Because you're still breathing. Clara moved closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off him despite the cold. Because you could have died in that snowdrift, and part of you would have been relieved, but you fought. You're still fighting. Jesse looked at her. His eyes were wet. You don't know what I've done. I know what you just told me. Clara's voice was steady. A man who didn't care about his failures wouldn't carry them like you do. A coward would have forgotten. You can't forget. That's supposed to be comforting. It's supposed to be true. The wind picked up swirling snow across the porch. They stood together, two broken people, neither moving away. I should leave, Jessie said quietly. I'll bring trouble. This farm is nothing but trouble. Clara almost smiled. One more won't make a difference. Clara, stay. The word came out before she could stop it. At least until spring. You're not healed enough to travel, and we could use the help. Jessie searched her face. You sure? No. She wasn't sure of anything. But Eli had smiled more in the past week than in the past year. Ruth had someone to argue with besides herself. And Clara? Clara had stopped feeling so cold. I'm sure, she said. Jessie nodded slowly. Until spring, then. They went inside together. The fire was burning low. Ruth's snores drifted from the back room. Eli was curled under his blankets, clutching the wooden horse Jessie had carved him from a scrap of kindling. Clara watched Jessie settle onto the pallet by the hearth. His eyes met hers once more across the dim room. Thank you, he said, for listening. Thank you for telling me. She retreated to her own bed and lay in the darkness, listening to the wind, listening to the stranger's breathing, listening to her own heart beat faster than it had in 3 long years. Outside, the snow began to fall again. And somewhere in Bitter Creek, Vernon Shaw lit a cigar and studied a map of the Whitmore property, already planning his next move. Morning came gray and bitter. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices. Eli's high and excited, Jessie's low and patient. You hold it like this. See, let the wood talk to you. Wood can't talk. Everything talks if you listen right. Clara pulled on her shawl and stepped into the main room. Jessie sat by the fire with Eli beside him, both bent over a piece of wood. Jessie's knife moved in small, careful strokes. Shavings curled onto the floor. What are you making? Clara asked. Eli looked up, grinning. A horse. Mr. Jesse's teaching me. Is he now? Boy's got good hands. Jesse didn't look up from his work. Steady. He gets that from his father. The words hung in the air. Jesse's knife paused just for a moment. Then he resumed carving. Ruth emerged from the back room, squinting at the scene with suspicion. Coffee's burning. I'll get it. Clara moved to the stove, grateful for something to do with her hands. Mama can Mr. Jesse stay forever? The question hit Clara like a fist. She fumbled the coffee pot, nearly spilling it. Eli. I just mean he could help with the farm and teach me things. And Eli's voice dropped. He doesn't look at me like I'm bad. The silence that followed was terrible. Jesse set down his knife. He looked at Eli with something raw in his eyes. Who looks at you like you're bad? He asked quietly. Everyone. Eli's small shoulders hunched. Tommy Miller says my pa was a thief. He says I'm probably a thief too. Mrs. Patterson crosses the street when she sees me. Pastor Cobb told Mama I need extra prayer 'cause sin runs in families. Clara's hands were shaking. She set the coffee pot down hard. Eli baby. It's true, Mama. Eli's voice was steady, too steady for an 8-year-old. I hear what they say. I'm not stupid. Jesse reached out and put his hand on Eli's shoulder. The boy flinched, then stilled. Listen to me, Jesse said. What people say doesn't make it true. Your pa was a good man. Your mama's a good woman. And you? He squeezed gently. You're the bravest kid I've ever met. How do you know? Because you're still here. Because you haven't let them break you. Jesse's voice roughened. That takes more guts than any gunfight. Eli's eyes filled with tears. He threw his arms around Jesse's neck and held on tight. Clara turned away. She couldn't watch. If she watched, she'd cry. And if she cried, she might never stop. Ruth moved beside her. "That man," Ruth said quietly, "is either the best thing that ever happened to us, or the worst." Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. "I reckon we'll find out which." The days settled into a rhythm. Jesse mended fences despite Clara's protests that he wasn't healed enough. He chopped wood, fixed the barn roof, taught Eli to whittle and ride properly. He ate dinner at their table and told stories by the fire tales of cattle drives and frontier towns and a West that seemed made of legend. Eli blossomed. He laughed now, a sound Clara had almost forgotten. He stood taller. He stopped flinching when adults raised their voices. Ruth thawed slowly, grudgingly. She still watched Jesse with suspicion, but she'd started setting a fourth plate without being asked. And Clara found herself watching Jesse when he wasn't looking. The way he moved, careful and deliberate. The way he talked to Eli, patient and kind. The way his eyes found hers across the room, holding for just a second too long. She was in trouble. She knew it. But knowing didn't stop the feeling. 3 weeks after the night on the porch, Clara rode into Bitter Creek for supplies. She went alone. Jesse had offered to come, but she'd refused. His presence would only make things worse. The town was small, a single main street lined with clapboard buildings. The general store, the church, the sheriff's office, the saloon. A handful of people moved through the cold heads, down faces grim. Clara tied her horse outside the general store and went in. Silas Pruitt, the owner, looked up from his ledger. His expression soured. "Mrs. Whitmore." "Mr. Pruitt, I need flour, salt, and coffee. Cash only." "I have cash." She placed coins on the counter. Pruitt counted them slowly, like he was hoping to find them counterfeit. "That'll get you flour," he said. "Nothing else. Prices went up." Clara's jaw tightened. The prices hadn't gone up. He'd raised them for her. "Fine." She took the single bag of flour and turned to leave. The door opened. Vernon Shaw walked in. He was a big man, thick through the chest and shoulders, with a silver beard and cold gray eyes. He wore a black coat and a hat that cost more than Clara's farm earned in a year. "Mrs. Whitmore." His voice was smooth as oil. "What a pleasant surprise." "Mr. Shaw." Clara kept her voice flat. "I heard you had some excitement out at your place. A stranger, they say. A wounded man." Clara's blood chilled. How did he know news travels fast in small towns? Shaw smiled, reading her face. "Especially when my men are watching. Your men have no business on my property. The road past your property is public land. Can't help what my boys see when they're riding by." Shaw moved closer. "What I want to know is, what kind of woman takes in a strange man living alone with him, with a child in the house? He works for me, room and board." "That's not what it looks like." "I don't care what it looks like." Shaw's smile widened. "You should. Pastor Cobb's been talking. The Women's Auxiliary is concerned. Sheriff Denton's been asking questions." He leaned in. "A widow living in sin with a drifter. It doesn't look good, Clara. Doesn't look good at all." "Is that a threat?" "It's a friendly warning." Shaw stepped back, spreading his hands. "I'm a reasonable man. Sell me the farm. I'll give you fair price. You can take your boy somewhere fresh, start over. No more whispers, no more looks. That farm belonged to my husband. It belongs to my son now." "Your husband was a thief." "My husband was murdered." The words burst out before she could stop them. "And you know it." Shaw's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something cold. "Careful, Mrs. Whitmore." His voice dropped. "Accusations like that can be dangerous, especially for a woman in your vulnerable position." He tipped his hat and walked out. Clara stood frozen, the bag of flour clutched to her chest. Her hands were trembling. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it. Silas Pruitt watched from behind the counter, saying nothing. She walked out into the cold. Pastor Cobb stood on the church steps across the street watching her. His wife Agnes stood beside him. Agnes looked away quickly, shame on her face. The pastor didn't look away. His eyes followed Clara as she mounted her horse. "We'll be praying for you, Mrs. Whitmore," he called out. "Praying for your immortal soul." Clara rode home without looking back. She told Jesse everything. He listened in silence, his face growing darker with each word. When she finished, he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the snow. "This Shaw," he said. "He owns the sheriff, and the pastor, and half the town council." "What about the other half?" "Scared of him." Jesse turned. His eyes were hard. "I've met men like him before. They don't stop. They don't negotiate. They take what they want and destroy what they can't have." "I know." "Then you know staying here is dangerous. Leaving is worse." Clara stood. "If I run, Shaw wins. Eli grows up knowing his mama was a coward. William's memory becomes whatever Shaw says it was." She shook her head. "I won't do that. I can't." Jesse was quiet for a long moment. "Then we fight," he said. You saved my life." He crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could feel his warmth. "You gave me a place when I had none. You listened to the worst things I've ever done and didn't turn away." His voice dropped. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone." Clara's eyes stung. "You don't owe me anything." "This isn't about owing." Jesse reached out and took her hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, warm. "This is about choosing. I'm choosing to stay." Clara looked at their joined hands, then at his face. "Until spring," she whispered. "Until whenever." The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, something shifted between them, something fragile and new and terrifying. Clara didn't pull her hand away. Neither did Jesse. The next morning, Clara found Jesse already in the barn, saddling Ruth's old mare. "Where are you going?" He didn't turn around. "Town." "Jesse, no." Clara grabbed his arm. "After what I told you about Shaw, I need to see what we're dealing with." He finally looked at her. "You can't fight an enemy you don't know. You'll make things worse." "Things are already worse." He covered her hand with his. "Trust me." Clara wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that trust was a luxury she'd stopped affording years ago. But something in his eyes stopped her. "Be careful," she said instead. "Always am." He rode out before she could respond. Eli appeared at her side, watching the horse disappear into the white. "Is Mr. Jesse coming back?" Clara pulled her son close. "He promised he would." "People break promises." "Not him." She said it with more certainty than she felt. "Not him." Jesse returned 4 hours later, his face grim. Clara met him at the barn. "What happened?" "Shaw's got the town locked up tight. Sheriff won't talk to me. Store owner pretended I wasn't there. Even the blacksmith turned his back." Jesse unsaddled the mare with sharp, angry movements. "Only person who'd give me the time of day was a drunk outside the saloon." "What did he say?" "Said Shaw's been buying up land all over the territory. Anyone who won't sell ends up ruined. Accidents happen. Livestock dies. Barns burn." Jesse's jaw tightened. 3 families left last year alone." Clara's stomach dropped. "He's going to do the same to us." "He's going to try." "Jesse, I also learned something else." He turned to face her. "Shaw's got a ledger. Keeps records of every deal, every bribe, every dirty thing he's ever done. The drunk used to work for him, got fired for drinking. Said Shaw guards that ledger like it's made of gold." "Why would he keep something like that?" "Insurance. Make sure nobody crosses him." Jesse's eyes narrowed. "But it also means there's proof. Proof of what he did to William. Proof of everything." Clara's heart pounded. Where does he keep it? His office at the ranch, locked safe. That's impossible to get to. Maybe. Jesse moved closer. Maybe not. But right now, all Shaw knows is that you've got a hired hand. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know what I can do. What can you do? Jesse was quiet for a long moment. I used to be a deputy sheriff. I know how men like Shaw think. I know how they operate. He paused. And I know how to bring them down. Clara searched his face. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment you dragged me out of that snow. Before she could respond, Eli burst into the barn. Mama Grandma says Ryder's coming. Clara's blood went cold. 3 men on horseback approached the farm. Clara recognized the one in front immediately. Hank Dawson Shaw's foreman, a mean-looking man with a scar across his cheek and dead eyes. Jesse stepped onto the porch, positioning himself between the riders and the cabin door. Help you, gentlemen. His voice was calm, but Clara saw his hand rest near his hip. He had no gun there. The gesture was pure instinct. Dawson smiled, showing yellow teeth. Mr. Shaw sends his regards. Wanted to check on the widow Whitmore. Make sure she's comfortable. She's fine. Wasn't asking you, stranger. Dawson's eyes swept over Jesse with contempt. You the new hired help. Something like that. Funny thing about hired help, they come and go. Sometimes they go real sudden-like. Dawson leaned forward in his saddle. You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. The 2 men stared at each other. The tension crackled like heat lightning. Clara stepped forward. Tell Mr. Shaw I don't need checking on. And I don't need his regards. Dawson's smile widened. Feisty as ever, Mrs. Whitmore. Your husband was the same way. Look where it got him. Jesse moved so fast, Clara barely saw it. 1 second he was standing still. The next he had Dawson's horse by the bridle, yanking its head down hard. Get off this property, Jesse said quietly. Now. Dawson's face went red. His hand moved toward his gun. Try it. Jesse's voice was ice. I've killed better men than you before breakfast. The other 2 riders shifted nervously. Their horses stamped and snorted. Dawson's hand froze. This ain't over, he spat. It is for today. Jesse released the bridle. Ride! Dawson jerked his horse around. The 3 men galloped away, kicking up clouds of snow. Jesse watched them go, his body still coiled tight. You shouldn't have done that, Clara said. Probably not. They'll come back. I know. With more men. Jesse finally turned. His eyes found hers, and something in them made her breath catch. Then we'll be ready. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed listening to the wind, thinking about Dawson's face, about Shaw's ledger, about Jesse's hand reaching for a gun that wasn't there. She got up and pulled on her shawl. Jesse was awake by the fire, staring at the embers. Can't sleep either, she asked. Haven't slept right in 2 years. Clara sat down beside him. The fire cast dancing shadows across his face. What you said to Dawson, she said. About killing men. Was that true? Yes. She should have been afraid. She wasn't. How many were? 4. Jesse's voice was flat. 2 in the line of duty. 1 who murdered Thomas. 1 who was beating a woman in the street. He paused. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not sorry either. Clara pulled her shawl tighter. I've never killed anyone. Good. It changes you. He looked at her. I don't want you to change. Not like that. What if I have to protect Eli? Then you do what you have to do, but you don't carry it alone. Jesse's hand found hers in the darkness. I meant what I said. I'm not leaving. Clara's throat tightened. Why? Why do you care so much about a woman you barely know? Because you're the first person in 2 years who looked at me like I was worth saving. His voice cracked. Because when I told you about Thomas and Abigail, you didn't see a coward. You saw a man. Nobody's looked at me like that in—" He stopped. "Jesse, I know it's too soon. I know you're still grieving. I know I'm not—" He broke off, shaking his head. "Forget it. I shouldn't have said anything." Clara reached up and touched his face. He went still. "William's been gone 3 years," she said softly. "I loved him. Part of me always will. But I stopped grieving a long time ago. Survival doesn't leave much room for grief." Jesse's eyes searched hers. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying—" She took a breath. "I'm saying that when I look at you, I see a good man who thinks he's broken. I see someone who cares about my son like he's his own. I see someone who stood between me and danger without thinking twice." "Clara, let me finish." She moved closer. "I'm saying that for the first time in 3 years, I don't feel alone, and that terrifies me. Why? Because everyone I love either dies or leaves, and I don't think I could survive losing someone again." Jesse cupped her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "I swear it. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I don't." He kissed her then, soft and slow. Clara's hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. All the fear, all the loneliness, all the grief she'd carried for 3 long years, it all melted into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jesse rested his forehead against hers. "Well," he said, "that changes things." Clara laughed a small surprised sound. "I suppose it does." "Mama!" They sprang apart. Eli stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing up?" Clara's voice came out too high. "Heard voices." Eli looked between them, confused. Then his face lit up. "Are you and Mr. Jesse sweethearts now?" Clara's face burned. "Eli." "Because Tommy Miller's ma and pa kiss like that sometimes, when they think nobody's looking." Jesse cleared his throat. "We were just talking." "With your faces." Clara covered her face with her hands. Jesse made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Go back to bed, Eli." "Are you getting married? Can I be in the wedding? Can I—" "Bed. Now." Eli grinned and disappeared. Clara and Jesse stared at each other. The silence stretched. Then Jesse started laughing, really laughing, deep and warm and real. Clara joined him, the tension breaking into something lighter. "Well," Jesse said finally, "cat's out of the bag. He'll tell Ruth by morning." "Ruth already knows." Jesse smiled. "That woman sees everything." Clara groaned. "I'll never hear the end of it." "Could be worse." "How?" Jesse took her hand again. "Could be alone." Clara squeezed his fingers. "I suppose you're right." They sat together until the fire burned low, not talking, just being. For the first time in 3 years, Clara felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. 1 week later, the thaw began. Water dripped from the eaves. Patches of brown appeared in the endless white. The world was waking up, and so was Bitter Creek. Jesse worked the farm like a man possessed, fixing fences, mending the barn roof, clearing drainage ditches. Every task he completed was a declaration, "I'm staying." Clara watched him from the cabin window, coffee steaming in her hands. "You're staring again," Ruth said from behind her. "I'm not staring." "You've been staring for 10 minutes. Your coffee's gone cold." Clara turned. Ruth's face was unreadable, but her eyes held a glint of something that might have been amusement. "He's a good worker," Clara said defensively. "Mm-hmm. He is. I didn't say otherwise." Ruth returned to her mending. "Just wondering when you're going to stop pretending and admit you're in love with the man." Clara nearly dropped her cup. "I am not—" "Child. I've known you since you were 18 years old. I watched you fall in love with my son. I know what it looks like. Ruth's voice softened. William would want you to be happy. Clara's eyes stung. You really think so? I know so. He loved you more than anything. He'd hate seeing you alone. Ruth paused. That man out there, he's not William, but he's good, solid. The way he looks at Eli. She shook her head. That's not pretend. Clara sat down across from her mother-in-law. I'm scared. Of what? Of everything. Shaw, the town, losing Jesse like I lost William. Clara's voice broke. I can't do it again, Ruth. I can't bury another man I love. Ruth set down her mending and took Clara's hands. Listen to me, she said. You buried my son. You raised his child alone. You've survived 3 years of persecution and poverty and the kind of loneliness that breaks most people, and you're still standing. She squeezed hard. Whatever comes next, you'll survive that too, but don't let fear steal the good years you have left. Clara wiped her eyes. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't listening. A laugh escaped Clara, surprising them both. The door banged open. Eli rushed in, face flushed. Mama, Mr. Jesse found something in the barn. Clara and Ruth exchanged looks, then followed Eli outside. Jesse stood in the barn doorway holding something small and dark. As Clara approached, she saw what it was. A dead rat. But not just dead. Poisoned. Foam crusted its mouth. Found 3 more like this, Jesse said grimly. In the feed bin. Clara's blood turned to ice. The horses? Fine. I caught it before they ate any. But if I hadn't checked this morning... Shaw. Clara's hands clenched. This is Shaw. Has to be. Poison doesn't just appear. What do we do? Jesse tossed the rat aside. We go to the sheriff. The sheriff works for Shaw. Doesn't matter. We make an official complaint. Create a record. His jaw set. And then we start gathering evidence of our own. How? Jesse's eyes met hers. I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it. That night, Jesse laid out his plan. Shaw's ranch is 15 miles east. He keeps that ledger in his office. If we could get our hands on it. You want to rob Vernon Shaw? Ruth's voice was incredulous. I want to take back what he stole. Jesse leaned forward. That ledger has proof of every crooked deal he's made, including what he did to William. If we can get it to a federal marshal... There's no federal marshal within 100 miles, Clara interrupted. There's one in Cheyenne. I know him. Worked with him back in Montana. Jesse paused. If we can get that ledger to him, Shaw is finished. Clara shook her head. It's too dangerous. Shaw's ranch has 12 men. Not if we go during the spring roundup. Most of his hands will be out on the range. Jesse's voice was steady. I can get in and out. I've done worse. And if you get caught, I won't. Jesse. Clara. He took her hands. I've been running for 2 years. Running from Thomas. Running from Abigail. Running from every failure that haunts my dreams. I'm done running. His grip tightened. Let me do this. Let me be the man I should have been. Clara's heart ached. She saw it in his eyes, the desperate need for redemption, the hunger to finally save someone. I can't lose you, she whispered. You won't. You don't know that. No. Jesse's voice softened. But I know that if I don't try, Shaw wins. Eli grows up in a town that calls him a thief's son. You lose everything your husband worked for, and I spend the rest of my life knowing I could have stopped it. Clara closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to keep him safe, to hold on to this fragile happiness they'd built. But she thought of William, of his face when they dragged him away in chains, of the light dying in his eyes. She thought of Eli, of the rocks the town children threw, of the word bastard echoing in her son's ears. She opened her eyes. When? Jesse exhaled. 2 weeks. When the roundup starts. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Jesse. Clara. Listen to me. His voice was firm. If something goes wrong, Eli needs his mother. Ruth can't raise him alone. You have to stay. And if something goes wrong with you, then at least I'll have done one good thing. He pulled her close. Please, let me do this. Clara buried her face in his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady. Come back to me, she said. Promise me. I promise. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But promises Clara had learned meant nothing against a cruel world. The next 2 weeks passed too quickly. Jesse gathered information riding to town, asking careful questions, mapping Shaw's ranch from descriptions. Clara helped where she could, her fear growing with each passing day. Eli sensed something was wrong. He grew clingy, following Jesse like a shadow. You're not leaving, are you? He asked one evening. Jesse knelt to meet his eyes. I have to go away for a little while. Why? To help your mama, to help you. I don't want you to go. Eli's voice trembled. Everyone leaves. Jesse pulled the boy into a hug. I'm coming back. You hear me? No matter what, I'm coming back. Promise. Promise. Clara watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. That night, she lay in Jesse's arms, unable to sleep. Tell me about after, she whispered. After Shaw. After the ledger. What happens then? Jesse was quiet for a moment. I was thinking, maybe I could stay. For good. If you'd have me. Stay how? However you want. As a hired hand. As a husband, if you'd have me. His voice roughened. I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other a few months. But I've never been surer of anything in my life. Clara's heart stopped. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking if you'd consider it. Someday. When the time is right. She turned to face him. In the dim firelight, his eyes were vulnerable, hopeful, scared. Yes, she said. Yes. Yes, I'd consider it. More than consider it. She kissed him softly. But first, you have to come back alive. I will. He held her tighter. I will. They didn't sleep that night. They held each other instead, memorizing the feel of it, storing it up against the uncertainty ahead. The day Jesse left dawned gray and cold. Clara stood on the porch watching him saddle the mare. Every fiber of her being screamed to stop him, to beg him to stay. She stayed silent. Jesse checked his gear one final time. He had no gun, couldn't afford to buy one, but he had a knife and his wits. It would have to be enough. 3 days, he said. If I'm not back in 3 days, you'll be back. He crossed to her and kissed her hard. Clara clung to him, trying to pour everything she felt into that moment. I love you, he said against her lips. I should have said it sooner. Say it when you come back. He smiled, but his eyes were bright. Count on it. Eli ran out and hugged Jesse's legs. Ruth appeared in the doorway, her face tight. Don't do anything stupid, Ruth said. Yes, ma'am. And come back in one piece. That boy needs a father. Jesse glanced at Eli, then at Clara. I know, he said quietly. I know. He mounted the horse, took one last look at the cabin, at the family that had become his own. Then he rode east toward Shaw's ranch, toward danger, toward whatever waited on the other side. Clara watched until he disappeared over the hill. Then she went inside and began to pray. 2 days passed. Clara barely ate, barely slept. She jumped at every sound, ran to the window at every distant hoofbeat. Nothing. On the 3rd morning, she was feeding the chickens when Ruth called from the cabin. Ryder coming. Clara dropped the feed bucket and ran. But the rider approaching wasn't Jesse. It was Sheriff Tom Denton. He reined up in the yard, his face grim. "Mrs. Whitmore." He tipped his hat. "We need to talk." Clara's heart stopped. "What's happened?" "Your hired hand." Denton shifted in his saddle. "He's been arrested, caught breaking into Vernon Shaw's ranch last night." No. No. "Where is he?" Clara's voice came out strangled. "Town jail. He's being charged with breaking and entering, attempted theft, and assault on Shaw's foreman." Denton paused. "Shaw's pushing for a hanging." The world tilted. Clara grabbed the porch rail to keep from falling. "This is wrong. Jesse didn't." "Ma'am, he was caught in Shaw's office with his hands on a safe. Dawson's got a black eye, says otherwise about the assault." Denton's voice hardened. "I don't know what you two were planning, but it's over. And unless you want to go down with him, I suggest you cooperate." Clara straightened. Ice replaced the panic in her veins. "I want to see him." "That's not, I want to see him." Her voice was steel. "Now." Denton stared at her for a long moment. "Fine," he said finally. "Tomorrow. Visiting hours start at 10. He rode away. Clara stood frozen, her mind racing. Jesse was alive. That was something. But Shaw wanted him dead. Unless she did something, the man she loved would hang. Ruth appeared beside her. "What do we do?" the old woman asked. Clara's jaw set. "We fight." Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat by the fire, staring at the flames, her mind turning over every possibility. Ruth tried to get her to eat. She couldn't. Eli asked questions she couldn't answer. By dawn, she had a plan. "Ruth, I need you to stay with Eli." "What are you going to do?" Clara pulled on her coat. "Whatever I have to." She rode into Bitter Creek alone, her back straight, her jaw set. People stopped and stared as she passed. She ignored them all. The jail was a small building next to the sheriff's office. Clara tied her horse and walked inside. Sheriff Denton looked up from his desk. "Mrs. Whitmore, visiting hours don't start for another hour." "I'll wait." "You can wait outside." "I'll wait here." They stared at each other. Denton looked away first. Clara sat on a wooden bench and didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. An hour later, Denton led her to the cells in back. Jesse stood when he saw her. His face was bruised, his lips split. But his eyes lit up the moment they met hers. "Clara, what did they do to you?" She gripped the bars, her knuckles white. "Nothing I didn't earn." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "I'm sorry. I got careless. Dawson was waiting. Did you get it?" "The ledger." Jesse's jaw tightened. "I had it in my hands. Then Dawson came through the door with 3 men. They took it back." Clara's heart sank. "So it's over." "No." Jesse's eyes burned. "I saw what was in it, Clara. Everything. Shaw's bribes, his threats, names, dates, amounts. And William." His voice cracked. There were pages about William. How Shaw paid the sheriff to plant those cattle. How he paid the doctor to let William die in that cell. Clara couldn't breathe. "You saw proof. I saw everything. And I memorized as much as I could before they took it." Jesse reached through the bars and gripped her hands. "It's not over. We just need another way. Shaw wants you dead. I know. The trial is in 3 days. I know that too. Jesse," Clara's voice broke. "I can't lose you. I can't." "You won't." He pressed his forehead against the bars. "I promise you won't." "How can you promise that?" "Because I'm not done fighting." His grip tightened. "And neither are you." Denton appeared behind her. "Time's up." Clara pulled away slowly, memorizing Jesse's face. "I'll find a way," she said. "I swear it." "I know you will." She walked out of the jail with her head high. Inside, her heart was crumbling. But she didn't have time to crumble. She had 3 days to save the man she loved. Clara's first stop was the saloon. She'd never been inside. Respectable women didn't enter saloons. But Clara had stopped caring about respectable a long time ago. The room went silent when she walked in. A dozen men stared. Clara ignored them and walked straight to the bar. "I'm looking for Hector Mullins." The bartender's eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" "Clara Whitmore." Whispers rippled through the room. Clara kept her gaze fixed on the bartender. "Back corner," he said finally. "But lady, you don't want to talk to Hector." "Let me decide that." She found Mullins slumped at a table, a half-empty bottle in front of him. He was the drunk Jessie had mentioned, the one who used to work for Shaw. "Mr. Mullins." He looked up with bloodshot eyes. "Do I know you?" "No, but you knew my husband, William Whitmore." Mullins' face changed. Something like guilt flickered across it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Clara sat down across from him. "You worked for Shaw. You know what he did. You told a stranger about the ledger, and now that stranger is going to hang because he tried to get proof." Mullins reached for his bottle. Clara grabbed it first. "Hey, listen to me." Her voice was low and fierce. "An innocent man is going to die. A man who never did anything except try to help my family. I need your help." "I can't help you. Shaw would kill me." "Shaw's going to kill you anyway. You know too much. The only question is whether you die a coward or die having done one decent thing." Mullins stared at her. His hands were shaking. "What do you want from me?" "Testimony. Tell the court what you know. About the ledger, about William, about everything." "They'll never let me testify. Shaw owns the judge." "Then we don't go to the judge." Clara leaned forward. "We go to the people." Something sparked in Mullins' eyes. Fear, yes, but something else too. Something that might have been hope. "You're crazy," he said. "Probably. Shaw will destroy you. He's been trying for 3 years." Clara stood. "The trial is in 3 days. I'll come for you the night before. Be ready." She walked out before he could refuse. That night, Clara gathered her allies. Ruth, Agnes Cobb, the pastor's wife, who came to the farm in secret. Old Mr. Henderson, who'd offered Jessie work. Martha Patterson, a widow who remembered what it was like to be shunned. 5 people against Vernon Shaw's empire. It wasn't much. It would have to be enough. "We need witnesses," Clara said. "People who've seen what Shaw does. People who've been hurt by him." "Everyone's afraid," Martha said. "Shaw's got too much power." "Then we show them he can be beaten." Clara's voice hardened. "We show them that standing together is stronger than cowering alone." "How?" Agnes asked. Clara thought of Jessie, of his promise, of the determination in his eyes even behind bars. "We start talking. Every person in this town who's ever been wronged by Shaw, we find them. We remind them what they've lost. We give them a reason to fight. And if they won't, then we fight alone. But we fight." Ruth put her hand on Clara's shoulder. "William would be proud of you." Clara's eyes stung. "William would be doing this himself if he were here." "He's not here. You are. And you're stronger than he ever was." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. She'd never thought of herself as strong. She'd just been surviving. But maybe surviving was its own kind of strength. 3 days, she said. "We have 3 days." They got to work. The next 2 days blurred together. Clara rode from farm to farm telling William's story, telling Jessie's story, telling the truth about Vernon Shaw. Some people listened. Some slammed doors in her face. A precious few, agreed to come to the trial. Ruth stayed with Eli, who grew quieter with each passing hour. "Is Mr. Jessie going to die?" he asked the night before the trial. Clara knelt beside him. "Not if I can help it." Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby. I'm scared too. What if the bad people win? Clara pulled him into her arms. Then we keep fighting. We never stop fighting. That's what your papa would want. That's what Mr. Jesse would want. I want to help. You are helping, just by being brave. She kissed his forehead. Now try to sleep. But Clara didn't sleep. She couldn't. Tomorrow would decide everything. The morning of the trial dawned cold and gray. Clara dressed in her best clothes, the ones she'd worn to William's funeral. It seemed fitting somehow. She rode into town to find the street outside the courthouse already crowded. More people than she'd expected. Some she recognized. Some she didn't. Sheriff Denton stood by the courthouse doors looking uncomfortable. Vernon Shaw arrived in a polished black carriage. He stepped out in a fine suit, silver-headed cane in hand, looking every inch the respectable businessman. His eyes found Clara across the street. He smiled. She didn't look away. The courtroom was packed. Clara pushed her way to the front where a seat had been saved by Agnes Cobb. "How many?" Clara whispered. 12 agreed to speak. 8 showed up. 8. Not enough. But it was something. The judge entered. A thin man with cold eyes. Judge Harlan Moore, appointed to his position with Shaw's money. This court is now in session. They brought Jesse in. Clara's heart clenched. He looked worse than before. Fresh bruises covered his face. He walked with a limp. Their eyes met across the room. Jesse smiled, small and sad. "I'm still here," that smile said. "I'm still fighting." The prosecutor, a pompous man named Aldridge, presented the case against Jesse. Breaking and entering. Attempted theft. Assault on Hank Dawson. "The evidence is clear," Aldridge declared. "This drifter, this vagrant, attacked an upstanding citizen and attempted to rob our community's most respected businessman. The penalty for such crimes is death." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. Judge Moore turned to Jesse. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Jesse stood slowly. "I do, Your Honor." "Then speak." "I broke into Vernon Shaw's ranch." "That's true. I was looking for a ledger, a record of every crime Shaw has committed against this community." Jesse's voice rang clear through the courtroom. "I found it. I saw proof that Shaw paid Sheriff Denton to frame William Whitmore for cattle theft. I saw proof that Shaw paid the doctor to let William die in his cell. I saw proof of bribes, threats, and land theft going back 20 years. The crowd murmured. Shaw's face darkened. "Lies," Aldridge sputtered. "Desperate lies from a desperate criminal." "Then let Shaw open his safe," Jesse said. "Let him show this court that the ledger doesn't exist." All eyes turned to Shaw. He rose slowly, his smile never wavering. "I have no ledger, Your Honor. This man is clearly deranged. He broke into my home, attacked my foreman, and now he invents fantasies to save his neck." "Then you won't mind opening your safe?" Jesse pressed. "If there's nothing to hide." "I will not be bullied by a criminal." Shaw's voice hardened. "Your Honor, I demand this trial proceed as planned." Judge Moore nodded. "The defendant's request is denied. Continue, Mr. Aldridge." Clara shot to her feet. "I have witnesses, Your Honor." The courtroom went silent. Moore's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is highly irregular. My husband was murdered by Vernon Shaw. This man tried to prove it. I have 8 people willing to testify to Shaw's crimes. This is not a trial about your husband. It's a trial about justice." Clara's voice shook but held. "If this court won't hear the truth, then what is it for?" Moore's face reddened. "Sit down, Mrs. Whitmore, or I'll have you removed." "Remove me, then." "But the people of this town deserve to hear what I have to say." Shaw rose again. "Your Honor, this woman is clearly hysterical with grief. Her accusations are baseless. Her witnesses are drunks and malcontents. I ask that she be removed immediately." Granted. Sheriff, escort Mrs. Whitmore outside. Denton moved toward her. And then something unexpected happened. Old Mr. Henderson stood up. I want to hear what she has to say. Martha Patterson rose beside him. So do I. One by one, people throughout the courtroom stood. 5, 10, 20. The murmurs grew to shouts. Let her speak. We deserve the truth. Shaw's a crook and everyone knows it. Moore banged his gavel. Order, order in this court. But the crowd wouldn't be silenced. Shaw's face went pale. For the first time, Clara saw fear in his eyes. She stepped forward, her voice rising above the chaos. 3 years ago, Vernon Shaw murdered my husband. He's spent every day since trying to drive me and my son from our home. He's poisoned our livestock, turned the town against us, and now he wants to hang an innocent man for daring to expose him. Lies, Shaw shouted. Then let Hector Mullins speak. Clara turned to the crowd. Hector worked for Shaw for 15 years. He knows where the bodies are buried. All eyes turned to Mullins, who stood trembling in the back of the room. Hector. Shaw's voice was dangerous. You don't want to do this. Mullins looked at Shaw, then at Clara, then at Jesse, battered and bruised but still standing. Something in him broke. It's true, Mullins said. All of it. I was there when Shaw paid the sheriff to frame Whitmore. I was there when he bragged about letting him die. I was there... His voice cracked. I was there when he burned the Morrison family out of their home because they wouldn't sell. The courtroom erupted. Moore banged his gavel frantically. This testimony is inadmissible. This man is a known drunk. I'm a drunk because of what I've seen, Mullins shouted. Because I couldn't live with myself. Shaw's a murderer and a thief, and everyone in this room knows it. Shaw moved toward Mullins, his face twisted with rage. You're dead, Hector. You hear me? Dead? That's enough. Sheriff Denton stepped between them, his hand on his gun. Vernon, sit down. Shaw froze. What did you say to me? I said, sit down. Denton's voice was steady, but his eyes were haunted. I've spent 10 years doing your bidding. 10 years turning a blind eye. No more. The courtroom went utterly silent. Denton turned to face the judge. Your Honor, I have information relevant to this case. Information about Vernon Shaw's activities in this county. Moore's face drained of color. Sheriff, think very carefully about what you're doing. I've been thinking for 10 years, Your Honor. I'm done thinking. Denton reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is a receipt for $500 paid by Vernon Shaw to me personally to ensure William Whitmore's conviction. I've kept it all these years as insurance. He looked at Shaw. Guess it's finally time to cash in. Shaw lunged for the paper. 2 men from the crowd grabbed him and held him back. You're all dead, Shaw screamed. Every one of you, I'll burn this town to the ground. Get him out of here. Denton's voice was flat. Lock him in the same cell he wanted for Hawkins. Deputies moved forward. Shaw fought cursing and spitting, but they dragged him from the courtroom. Clara's knees buckled. Agnes caught her before she fell. It's over, Agnes whispered. Clara, it's over. But Clara wasn't listening. She was pushing through the crowd toward Jesse, who stood alone by the defendant's table, his face stunned. Clara! She threw her arms around him. He winced at the pressure on his bruises but held her tight. You did it, he whispered. We did it. I thought I was going to hang. Never. She pulled back, tears streaming down her face. I told you I'd find a way. Jesse touched her cheek, wiping away tears with his thumb. I love you. Say it again. I love you. One more time. He laughed, broken and beautiful. I love you, Clara Whitmore, and I'm never leaving you again. Around them, the courtroom buzzed with chaos and celebration. But for Clara, there was only Jesse's arms, Jesse's voice, Jesse's heartbeat against her chest. For the first time in 3 years, she let herself believe in tomorrow. The aftermath unfolded quickly. Judge Moore fled town that night, likely headed for a territory where his reputation wouldn't follow. Sheriff Denton turned himself in to the federal marshals who arrived from Cheyenne within a week, trading testimony for a reduced sentence. Vernon Shaw's empire crumbled overnight. The ledger was found exactly where Jesse said it would be. Dozens of names. Dozens of crimes. 3 murders, including William Whitmore's. Shaw would hang. Justice delayed by 3 long years would finally be served. But Clara found she couldn't celebrate. She sat on the porch the evening after the trial, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jesse found her there. "Eli's asking for you." "In a minute." He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Clara shook her head. "That's the problem. I spent 3 years fighting, surviving, hating. Now it's over, and I don't know who I am without the fight." Jesse was quiet for a moment. "You're a mother, a daughter, a woman who stood up when everyone else stayed down." "That sounds like a eulogy." "It's a beginning." He took her hand. "Clara, you don't have to know who you are tomorrow. You just have to show up. The rest comes later." Clara leaned into him. "What about you? What do you do now?" "Well," Jesse cleared his throat, "I was thinking maybe I'd stick around, if there's work to be had." "Work?" "Room and board. Nothing fancy." Clara's lips twitched. "Just work. Unless there's something else on offer." She turned to face him. His eyes were soft, hopeful, scared. "I seem to recall a question," she said slowly. "Something about marriage." "Did I ask that I don't remember?" "Jesse Hawkins." He grinned. "Clara Whitmore, will you marry me for real this time? With a ring and a preacher, and your boy standing beside us?" "Yes." The word came out fierce. "Yes, I'll marry you." Jesse kissed her, then slow and sweet and full of promise. From the doorway, Eli whooped. "I knew it. I knew it. Grandma, they're getting married." Ruth appeared behind him, arms crossed, but a smile played at her lips. "About time," she said. "I was starting to think I'd have to propose for him." Clara laughed through her tears. Jesse held her tight. And for the first time since William died, the Whitmore farm felt like home. The week after Shaw's arrest should have been peaceful. It wasn't. Clara woke 3 days later to the sound of horses. Fast horses, many of them. Jesse was already at the window, his body tense. "Stay inside." "Jesse." "Clara, stay inside." She grabbed Eli and pulled him behind her. Ruth appeared from the back room, her face pale. 8 riders thundered into the yard. Clara recognized Hank Dawson at the front. "Hawkins?" Dawson's voice cut through the morning air. "Get out here." Jesse stepped onto the porch unarmed. "Shaw's in jail, Dawson. It's over." "It ain't over till I say it's over." Dawson spat on the ground. "You cost me my job, my future, everything I built. You built it on other people's graves. And I'll build it on yours." Dawson drew his gun. "You got 2 choices. Come with us quiet, or we burn this farm with everyone inside." Clara's blood turned to ice. Jesse didn't move. "There are women and a child in there." "Should have thought about that before you ruined my life." Clara pushed past Ruth and stepped onto the porch beside Jesse. "Clara, no, Mr. Dawson." Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "The whole town knows what happened. The federal marshals know. If you hurt us, there's nowhere you can run." Dawson laughed. "Lady, I'm already running. Might as well make it worth my while." He cocked his gun. Clara didn't flinch. "Then you'll have to shoot me first." "Clara." Jesse tried to push her behind him. She wouldn't move. Dawson's eyes flickered. Something in them shifted. Uncertainty. Fear. "You got guts," he said slowly. I'll give you that. I've got more than guts. I've got nothing left to lose. Clara stepped forward. You can kill us. You can burn this farm. But it won't change anything. Shaw's finished. You're finished. The only question is whether you spend your last days as a murderer or a man who walked away. The silence stretched. Dawson's gun hand trembled. Boss? One of his men shifted nervously. Maybe we should... Shut up. But Dawson's voice had lost its edge. Clara held his gaze, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Walk away, Mr. Dawson, while you still can. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. Then Dawson lowered his gun. This ain't over, he said, but the threat was hollow. He wheeled his horse and rode away. His men followed. Clara's knees gave out. Jesse caught her before she hit the ground. You crazy, stubborn, beautiful woman. His voice shook. What were you thinking? I was thinking I didn't survive 3 years of hell to lose you now. Jesse pulled her close. His heart hammered against her chest. Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that. He laughed, ragged and relieved. I know. Ruth appeared in the doorway. Eli clutched to her side. Are they gone? The boy asked. They're gone. Clara reached for her son. They're gone, baby. Eli threw his arms around her neck. Mama, you were so brave. I was terrified. That's what brave means. Eli's voice was small but certain. Mr. Jesse told me. Brave is being scared and doing it anyway. Clara met Jesse's eyes over her son's head. Smart man, she whispered. I have my moments. That night, Clara couldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving nothing but raw fear and the cold knowledge of how close they'd come. Jesse found her by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. Can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see Dawson's gun. Jesse sat beside her. You saved our lives today. I almost got us killed. But you didn't. He took her hand. Clara, what you did out there, standing up to armed men, that's not something everyone can do. I didn't think. I just moved. That's the point. When it mattered, you moved toward danger instead of away from it. Jesse's voice softened. Thomas didn't have someone like you. If he had, maybe things would have been different. Clara turned to face him. You can't keep blaming yourself for Thomas. I know. I'm working on it. He paused. Having something to live for helps. Someone. He brought her hand to his lips. A whole family of someones. Clara leaned into him, letting his warmth chase away the cold. We should get married soon, she said quietly. How soon? This week, before something else tries to kill us. Jesse laughed softly. That might be the most romantic proposal I've ever heard. I'm a practical woman. I noticed. He kissed her forehead. This week it is. They sat together until the fire burned low, planning a future they were finally starting to believe in. Word of Clara's confrontation with Dawson spread through Bitter Creek like wildfire. By the next morning, 3 families had come to the farm with food and apologies. By afternoon, the number had doubled. Mrs. Whitmore, a woman Clara barely recognized, stood on her porch, a basket in her hands. I'm so sorry for everything. The way we treated you, the things we said. Her voice broke. Can you ever forgive us? Clara looked at the woman. Part of her wanted to say no. Part of her wanted to slam the door and never speak to any of them again. But she thought of Eli, of the life he deserved, of the community he needed. Forgiveness takes time, Clara said finally. But we can start with hello. The woman's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Thank you. More visitors came. More apologies. More offers of help. Not everyone, of course. Some families stayed away too proud or too ashamed. But enough came that Clara started to believe something might actually change. They're only here because you stood up to Dawson. Jessie said that evening. I know. They should have stood with you from the beginning. I know that too. Clara watched Eli playing in the yard with children who'd once thrown stones at him. But people are weak, Jessie. They follow the loudest voice. For 3 years, that voice was Shaw's. And now, Clara turned to face him. Now it's mine. The spring dance was 3 days away. Clara hadn't planned to go. She'd spent years avoiding town gatherings, hiding from judgment and whispers. But everything had changed. We should go, Jessie said over dinner. Ruth looked up sharply. Are you sure that's wise? It's necessary. Jessie met Clara's eyes. We can't hide forever. If we want to be part of this community, we have to show up. And if they're not ready for us, then we show them what they're missing. Jessie smiled slightly. Besides, I owe you a dance. You can't dance. I can try. Eli bounced in his seat. Can I come? Can I please? Clara looked at her son. His eyes were bright, hopeful. The eyes of a child who was finally starting to believe good things could happen. Yes, she said. We're all going. The night of the dance arrived. Clara wore her mother's wedding dress, altered again this time for celebration instead of mourning. Ruth had spent hours on her hair. Eli wore his best shirt, the one Jessie had bought him in town. They rode in together, a family forged from loss and hope. The town hall glowed with lantern light. Music drifted through the open doors. People milled outside talking and laughing. Conversation stopped as the Whitmore wagon approached. Clara's stomach tightened. Old fears surged up, whispering that she didn't belong, that she'd never belong. Jessie took her hand. Together, he said. Together. They walked inside. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to them. Clara lifted her chin and kept walking. Agnes Cobb was the first to move. She crossed the room and took Clara's hands. I'm glad you came. Her voice was warm, truly glad. Thank you, Agnes. Old Mr. Henderson appeared beside them. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Hawkins, welcome. Others followed. Not everyone, but enough. Enough hands extended. Enough smiles offered. Enough space made. Mama. Eli tugged her sleeve. Tommy Miller's here. Clara tensed. Tommy Miller, the boy who'd called Eli names for years. Do you want to leave? No. Eli squared his shoulders. I want to say hello. Before Clara could respond, Eli walked across the room to where Tommy stood with his parents. Clara watched, her heart in her throat. The two boys stared at each other. Tommy's parents looked uncomfortable. Then Tommy stuck out his hand. I'm sorry, he said, for the things I said. My pa told me the truth about your pa. He wasn't a thief. Eli hesitated. Clara held her breath. Then Eli shook Tommy's hand. Thanks, he said simply. The boys stood awkwardly for a moment. Then Tommy grinned. Want to see something? My pa got me a new pocket knife. Yeah. They ran off together, and just like that, 3 years of cruelty began to heal. Clara's eyes stung. Jessie's arm slipped around her waist. He's going to be okay, Jessie said softly. I know. Clara wiped her eyes. I finally believe it. The fiddles started up. Couples moved on to the dance floor. Jessie cleared his throat. I believe I promised you a dance. You promised to try. Same thing? He held out his hand. May I? Clara took it. They moved onto the floor, and Jessie was right. He couldn't dance worth a damn. He stepped on her feet twice in the first minute. His rhythm was off, his movements stiff. Clara didn't care. She was dancing with the man she loved in a town that was finally learning to accept her, surrounded by a family she'd built from nothing. I'm terrible at this, Jessie muttered. You're perfect. Liar. Maybe, she smiled up at him. But I'm your liar now. His eyes softened. Yeah, you are. They danced until the song ended, then another, then another. Eli ran past with Tommy laughing. Ruth sat with the older women actually talking, actually smiling. For one night, everything was exactly as it should be. Then the door burst open. A man Clara didn't recognize stumbled in, breathless and wild-eyed. "Shaw escaped!" he shouted. "Shaw broke out of the jail. He's got a gun and he's heading this way." Chaos erupted. Women screamed. Men shouted. Parents grabbed children. Clara's blood turned to ice. "Eli!" She spun around, searching the crowd. "Eli!" "Mama!" His voice came from across the room. Jesse was already moving. He pushed through the crowd, grabbed Eli, and brought him back to Clara. "We need to go," Jesse said. "Now. My rifle's at the farm." "So is Dawson, probably." Shaw's men scattered, but they didn't all leave town. Jesse's jaw tightened. "We need to find somewhere safe." Sheriff Denton's deputy appeared, trying to restore order. "Everyone stay calm. We've got men looking for Shaw. Stay inside, stay together." "That's not good enough." Jesse turned to Clara. "The church. It's got stone walls, one entrance. If Shaw comes here, we can hold him off." "What about everyone else?" "They can come too, but we have to move." Clara grabbed Ruth's arm. "Come on." They pushed through the crowd toward the back door. "Wait!" Agnes Cobb caught up to them. "Where are you going?" "The church. It's safer." Agnes nodded. "I'll bring everyone I can." They slipped out into the night. The church was empty. Clara had never been so grateful for darkness. Jesse checked every corner, every shadow. Ruth settled Eli in a pew, whispering reassurances. Clara stood at the window watching the street. "He'll come here," she said quietly. "Maybe. No, he'll come." Clara's voice was certain. "Shaw blamed me for everything. I'm the one who stood up in that courtroom. I'm the one who brought Mullins forward." "Clara." "He'll come for me, Jesse. And when he does, I need you to take Eli and run. Like hell." "Jesse." "I'm not leaving you." He crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. "We face this together. All of it." "He'll kill you." "He'll try." Jesse's eyes burned. "But I've spent 2 years running from fights I should have faced. Not anymore. Not with you." Clara's throat tightened. "I can't lose you." "You won't. You keep saying that." "Because I mean it." He pulled her close. "Whatever happens tonight, we face it together. Promise me." Clara closed her eyes. She thought of William, of all the promises that had been broken. But Jesse wasn't William. Jesse had already faced death and come back. Jesse had already chosen her again and again. "I promise," she whispered. They held each other in the darkness, waiting for the storm to come. An hour passed, then 2. People trickled into the church. Agnes, Martha, old Mr. Henderson with his hunting rifle. Others Clara barely knew, drawn by fear and the need for safety. Eli fell asleep in Ruth's lap. Clara watched and waited. "Maybe he's gone," Martha whispered. "Maybe he ran." "Shaw doesn't run." Clara's voice was flat. "He destroys." Jesse sat beside her, his body tense. He'd found an old axe handle in the church basement. It wasn't much, but it was something. "When this is over," he said quietly, "I want to rebuild the barn roof, put in a proper chicken coop, maybe get some cattle." Clara looked at him. "You're planning a future, now. Best time for it." He almost smiled. "Gives me something to fight for." Before Clara could respond, the church doors crashed open. Vernon Shaw stood in the entrance, a gun in each hand. His fine suit was torn. Blood streaked his face. His eyes were wild, burning with a fury that looked like madness. "Clara Whitmore," his voice echoed off the stone walls. "You took everything from me, everything I built, everything I am." Jesse moved in front of Clara. "Shaw, Put the guns down. Shut up. Shaw's gun swung toward him. You're nothing, a drifter, a coward. You don't matter. Then let him go, Clara said, stepping around Jesse. It's me you want. Clara, no. Stay back, Jesse. She kept her eyes on Shaw. You're right, Mr. Shaw. I took everything from you. But you took everything from me first. My husband, my reputation, 3 years of my life. Your husband was weak. My husband was innocent, and you murdered him. Shaw's face twisted. I should have killed you too. Should have burned that farm to the ground the day he died. Why didn't you? The question seemed to catch him off guard. His guns wavered. Because I wanted to watch you suffer. Watch you lose everything piece by piece. His voice cracked. But you wouldn't break. You just kept standing there, kept surviving, kept looking at me like I was dirt. You are dirt. Shaw's gun came up. His finger tightened on the trigger. Clara didn't flinch. Go ahead, she said quietly. Kill me. But it won't change anything. The ledger's with the marshals. Your men are scattered. Your empire is ashes. She took a step forward. You've already lost Vernon. You lost the moment you decided other people's lives didn't matter. Shaw's hand trembled. Sweat rolled down his face. I built this town. You poisoned it, and now it's finally healing. No! Shaw's voice broke. No! I won't let you win. I won't. He raised the gun. Jesse moved. He tackled Shaw from the side, driving him into the wall. The gun went off the shot, going wild, shattering a window. They struggled on the ground. Shaw was older, but desperate. Jesse was wounded, but determined. Clara grabbed a candlestick from the altar. Shaw threw Jesse off and scrambled for his gun. Clara swung. The candlestick connected with Shaw's skull. He crumpled. Silence. Jesse lay on the floor, breathing hard. Clara stood over Shaw's unconscious body, the candlestick still in her hand. Clara. Jesse's voice was hoarse. Is he? Alive. Barely. Jesse pushed himself up, wincing. You hit him. I did. With a candlestick. It was handy. A laugh escaped him, pained and relieved. God, I love you. Clara dropped the candlestick and fell into his arms. Around them the church erupted. People rushed forward. Someone took Shaw's guns. Someone else ran for the deputy. But Clara didn't hear any of it. She held Jesse, and he held her, and they were alive. They were alive, and Shaw was finished, and tomorrow they could finally start building the life they deserved. Is it over? Jesse whispered. Clara looked at the man bleeding on the floor, at the people gathering around them, at Eli awake now running toward her with Ruth close behind. Yes, she said. It's finally over. Eli crashed into them both, his small arms wrapping around their legs. Mama, Mr. Jesse, you're okay. We're okay, baby. Clara smoothed his hair. We're all okay. Ruth appeared, her face wet with tears she'd never admit to shedding. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen, she said. Both of you. Thank you, Jesse offered. Just don't do it again. Ruth pulled them all into a fierce embrace. I'm too old for this nonsense. Clara laughed through her tears. Outside, voices rose as the deputy arrived. Shaw was dragged away conscious now and cursing. This time there would be no escape. This time justice would be served. But Clara didn't watch. She held her family close and let the rest of the world fade away. They walked home as the sun rose. Clara, Jesse, Ruth, and Eli together on the road that led to the farm. The sky turned pink, then gold, then the clear blue of a spring morning. Mr. Jesse, Eli's voice was sleepy. Are you going to be my pa now? Jesse stopped walking. He knelt down to meet Eli's eyes. Do you want me to be? Eli nodded solemnly. I think my real pa would like you. Mama says he was brave and kind. You're brave and kind too. Jesse's eyes glistened. I'd be honored, Eli, if your mama says it's okay. Eli looked up at Clara. "Mama?" Clara's throat was too tight for words. She nodded. Eli threw his arms around Jesse's neck. "I'm glad you got shot in our barn," he said. Jesse laughed wet and broken. "Me too, kid. Me too." They continued walking. Jesse carrying Eli, now the boy's head drooping against his shoulder. Ruth walked beside Clara. "William would be happy," Ruth said quietly. "You think so?" "I know so. He wanted you to live, Clara. Not just survive. Live." Ruth paused. "You're finally doing that." Clara reached out and took her mother-in-law's hand. "Thank you. For everything." "Don't thank me. Just name a grandbaby after me someday." Clara choked on a laugh. "I'll see what I can do." They crested the hill, and there it was. The farm. Their farm. Battered and worn but still standing. Home. Jesse shifted Eli's weight and looked at Clara. "So," he said. "About that wedding." "What about it?" "I was thinking tomorrow." "Tomorrow, unless you have other plans." Clara looked at the farm, at her son sleeping in Jesse's arms, at Ruth grumbling but smiling, at the man who'd stumbled into her life, bleeding and broken, and somehow become everything she needed. "Tomorrow works," she said. Jesse grinned. "Then tomorrow it is." They walked down the hill together toward home, toward tomorrow, toward a future that finally felt possible. Tomorrow came faster than Clara expected. She woke at dawn, her stomach tight with nerves. Today, she would marry Jesse Hawkins. Today, she would become a wife again. Ruth was already bustling around the cabin when Clara emerged. "About time. We've got work to do." "Ruth, it's barely light out." "And you're getting married in 6 hours. Sit down. Let me fix your hair." Clara sat. Ruth's hands worked through her hair gentle, despite her gruff manner. "Nervous?" Ruth asked. "Terrified." "Good. Means you care." Ruth's fingers paused. "William was nervous too. Day we got married, he nearly passed out during the vows." Clara smiled at the memory. "I remember. You had to pinch him." "Twice." Ruth resumed her work. "But he stood up there and said the words, and he meant everyone. That's what matters. Not the dress, not the ceremony. Just the meaning." "I loved him, Ruth." "I know. I still do in a way." "I know that too." Ruth's voice softened. "But the heart's a big place, Clara. Room enough for William's memory and Jesse's future. Don't feel guilty for living." Clara's eyes stung. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You young folks just don't listen." Eli burst through the door, already dressed in his good clothes. "Mama, Mr. Jesse says he needs help with his tie. He says he's never worn one, and he's making a mess." Clara laughed. "Tell him I'll be there in a minute. He also says he loves you, and please don't change your mind." "Tell him I love him too, and I'm not changing anything." Eli grinned and ran back outside. Ruth finished Clara's hair and stepped back. "There. Beautiful." Clara looked in the small mirror. She barely recognized herself. The woman staring back had hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see what I've done with the wedding cake." The ceremony was simple. They gathered in the yard, Clara and Jesse facing each other with Ruth and Eli beside them. Agnes Cobb had brought the new pastor, a young man named Samuel, who'd arrived in Bitter Creek just 2 weeks ago. He knew nothing of the town's history with the Whitmores. To him, this was just a wedding. Clara liked that. "Dearly beloved," Samuel began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Clara Whitmore and Jesse Hawkins." Clara looked at Jesse. He stood straight and tall, his borrowed suit slightly too big, his tie crooked despite Eli's help. His eyes never left her face. Marriage is not a decision to be made lightly. It requires commitment, sacrifice, and above all, love. Love. Clara had loved before. She'd thought that kind of love only came once. She'd been wrong. Jesse Hawkins, do you take Clara Whitmore to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part? Jesse's voice was steady. I do. Clara Whitmore, do you take Jesse Hawkins to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do you part? Clara thought of William, of the promises she'd made to him, the promises he'd kept until the very end. This wasn't a betrayal. This was a continuation. I do. Pastor Samuel smiled. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Jesse cupped her face in his hands. Hello, Mrs. Hawkins, he whispered. Hello, Mr. Hawkins. He kissed her soft and sweet and full of promise. Eli cheered. Ruth wiped her eyes. Even Agnes applauded. And Clara Whitmore became Clara Hawkins, stepping into a future she'd stopped believing was possible. The celebration lasted until sunset. Neighbors came. People who'd shunned Clara for years brought food and gifts and awkward apologies. Clara accepted them all graciously, though she felt the strain. Jesse stayed close, his hand finding hers whenever the crowd pressed too near. You doing okay? He asked during a quiet moment. It's a lot. Want me to clear them out? Clara looked at the yard full of people, at Eli playing with children who'd once thrown stones, at Ruth laughing with women who'd crossed the street to avoid her. No, she said. This is what healing looks like, even when it's hard. Jesse squeezed her hand. Have I mentioned I love you? Once or twice. Clearly not enough. He kissed her temple. I love you, Clara Hawkins. I love you too, Jesse Hawkins. They stood together watching their community slowly rebuild itself around them. It wasn't perfect. Some people still kept their distance. Some wounds would never fully heal. But it was a start. As the last guest departed, Clara found herself alone on the porch. The stars were coming out. The air was cool, but not cold, the first real promise of spring. Jesse appeared beside her. Eli's asleep. Ruth's pretending she's not crying in her room. It was a good day. It was the best day. Jesse pulled her close. Thank you. For what? For dragging me out of that snowdrift, for patching me up, for believing I was worth saving when I didn't believe it myself. Clara turned in his arms. You saved yourself, Jesse. I just gave you a reason. That's not nothing. No, it's not. They stood together watching the stars wheel overhead. What happens now? Jesse asked. Now we live. We work the farm. We raise Eli. We build something worth having. Sounds good. He paused. Think we'll be happy? Clara thought about the question. She'd been so focused on surviving, she'd forgotten what happiness felt like. I think we already are, she said. Jesse smiled, and Clara knew she was right. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. Clara was hanging laundry when Jesse came out of the cabin, an envelope in his hand. This came for you, from Cheyenne. Clara dried her hands and took the letter. The return address made her heart skip. Federal Marshal's Office. She opened it with trembling fingers. Dear Mrs. Hawkins, this letter is to inform you that Vernon Shaw was executed on April 15, 1882, for the murders of William Whitmore James Morrison and Catherine Morrison. His property and assets have been seized by the territorial government. Additionally, upon review of Mr. Shaw's ledger, it has been determined that your late husband, William Whitmore, was innocent of all charges brought against him. His name has been officially cleared, and a formal apology will be issued by the territory. We understand this news comes too late to undo the suffering your family has endured. Please know that justice, however delayed, has been served. With deepest respect, Marshal Thomas Barker. Clara read the letter twice. 3 times. Her hands shook. Clara. Jesse's voice was worried. What is it? She handed him the letter, watched his face as he read. He's dead. Jessie said quietly. Shaw's dead. And William's name is clear. Jessie looked up. How do you feel? Clara thought about it. She'd expected relief, maybe even joy. Instead, she felt empty, hollowed out. I don't know, she admitted. I thought this would change something, but William's still gone. 3 years are still lost. But Eli will know the truth. Everyone will know. Yes. Clara took the letter back. That matters. That matters more than anything. She walked to the edge of the yard where a small wooden cross marked an empty grave. William's body was buried in the town cemetery, but Clara had placed this marker here years ago, a private memorial, a place to talk to him when the world got too heavy. She knelt beside it. They cleared your name, she said softly. Shaw's dead. The town knows the truth. She paused. I wish you could see Eli now. He's growing so fast. He's got your eyes, your stubbornness. A tear slipped down her cheek. I got married again. His name is Jesse. I think you'd like him. He's good and kind, and he loves your son like his own. The wind rustled through the grass. Clara imagined it was William's answer. I'll never forget you, she whispered. But I'm going to live now. Really live. That's what you'd want, isn't it? Silence. But in the silence, Clara felt something shift. A weight she'd carried for 3 years finally lifting. Goodbye, William. Thank you for loving me. She stood and walked back to where Jesse waited. You okay? He asked. I will be. Clara took his hand. Let's go tell Eli. They found him in the barn trying to teach the barn cat to fetch. Eli. Clara knelt beside him. I need to tell you something. Am I in trouble? No, baby. It's about your papa. Eli's face went serious. Real papa. Yes. The people in Cheyenne, the ones who make the laws, they looked at everything Mr. Shaw did, and they found out your papa was innocent. Eli's brow furrowed. I know he was innocent. Yes, but now everyone knows. The whole territory. Your papa's name is clear. He wasn't a thief, Eli. He was a good man who was wrongly accused. Does that mean Tommy can't call me names anymore? No one should call you names. Not about your papa, not about anything. Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he looked up at Jesse. Does this mean I have 2 papas now? Jesse's breath caught. Clara watched him struggle to answer. If you want, Jesse said finally, your real papa will always be your papa, but I'd be honored to be your second one. Eli considered this seriously. Can I call you Pa? You can call me whatever you want. Pa. Eli tested the word. Pa and Papa. That works. He threw his arms around Jesse's neck, then reached for Clara. The 3 of them held each other in the dusty barn surrounded by hay and chickens and one very confused cat. I love you, Eli said. Both of you. All of you. We love you too, baby, Clara whispered. Forever. Forever. Spring turned to summer. The farm flourished. Jesse worked the land with a dedication that bordered on obsession, as if every repaired fence and planted row was proof that he belonged. Clara watched him with wonder. This man who'd stumbled into her life broken and bleeding had become the foundation of everything. You're staring again, Ruth said one afternoon. I'm appreciating. Same thing. But Ruth smiled. He's a good man. Yes, he is. William would have liked him. Clara turned surprised. Ruth rarely spoke of her son now. You think so? I know so. William always said he wanted you to be happy, no matter what. Ruth's voice roughened. He told me the day before he was arrested. Made me promise to look after you if anything happened. You never told me that. You weren't ready to hear it. Ruth paused. You are now. Clara reached out and took her mother-in-law's hand. Thank you for keeping that promise. Thank you for giving an old woman a reason to keep living." They stood together watching Jesse and Eli work in the field. "Grandma," Eli's voice carried across the yard. "Come see. We found a snake." "Lord help me," Ruth muttered, but she was smiling as she walked toward them. Clara stayed on the porch a moment longer. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, broken, hopeless, barely surviving. She thought about the woman she was now, married, loved, part of a family and a community. The journey between those two women had been brutal. She'd lost everything, gained everything, and learned that strength wasn't about never breaking. Strength was about getting up after you shattered. "Clara." Jesse's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You have to see this snake. It's huge." She laughed and walked toward her family. The summer brought visitors. First came Marshall Barker himself traveling through on his way to Montana. "Mrs. Hawkins." He tipped his hat. "I wanted to pay my respects in person." "Marshall, this is my husband Jesse." Barker's eyes sharpened with recognition. "Jesse Hawkins, I heard what you did, breaking into Shaw's ranch, getting that ledger." Jesse shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't succeed. You started something. Sometimes that's enough." Barker reached into his coat. "I brought you something. Found it in Shaw's effects." He handed Jesse a small leather pouch. Jesse opened it. Inside was a silver star, a deputy's badge. "That belonged to Thomas Reed," Barker said. "Shaw kept it as a trophy. I thought it should go to someone who knew him." Jesse's face went pale. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know things. Thomas was a good man. He'd want his badge in good hands." Jesse stared at the star. His eyes were wet. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you, both of you. Shaw's been a thorn in this territory's side for 20 years. You two did what a dozen lawmen couldn't." He stayed for dinner, told stories of the frontier, made Eli's eyes go wide with tales of outlaws and justice. When he left the next morning, he shook Jesse's hand firmly. "Territory could use men like you. If you ever want to pin that badge on, look me up." Jesse glanced at Clara. "Maybe someday," he said. "Right now I've got a family to raise." Barker nodded. "That's the right answer. Good luck to you both." He rode away, leaving behind the badge and the possibility it represented. That night, Clara found Jesse on the porch, turning the badge over in his hands. "Thomas would be proud of you," she said. "You think so? I know so." She sat beside him. "You faced your fears. You fought for something bigger than yourself. That's what Thomas would have wanted." "I keep thinking about what Barker said, about pinning the badge on. Is that something you want?" Jesse was quiet for a long moment. "Part of me does. The part that wants to make up for failing Thomas." He paused. "But another part of me knows that the best way to honor him is to live a good life. Be a good husband, a good father. Those aren't mutually exclusive. No, but right now my family needs me more than the territory does." He set the badge aside. "Maybe in a few years when Eli's older. But for now, I'm exactly where I need to be." Clara leaned into him. "I love you, Jesse Hawkins." "I love you too, Clara Hawkins." They sat together until the stars came out, content in the life they'd built. Autumn arrived with golden leaves and cool mornings. Clara was in the kitchen when the pain hit. Sharp, low in her belly, familiar. "Ruth." Her voice came out strangled. "Ruth?" Ruth appeared immediately. "What is it?" "I think—" Clara gripped the table. "I think I'm pregnant." Ruth's eyes went wide. "Are you sure?" "I've felt this before. With Eli." Ruth's face transformed. Joy, then worry, then joy again. "Sit down. I'll make tea. Where's Jesse?" "In the field with Eli." "I'll get him." "No." Clara grabbed her arm. "Not yet. I want to be sure first." Ruth hesitated. "How long have you suspected—" A few weeks. I didn't want to say anything until... Clara pressed her hand to her stomach. Until I was certain. Ruth sat down across from her. How do you feel? Scared, happy, terrified. Clara laughed shakily. All of it at once. That's normal. Ruth's voice softened. When I was pregnant with William, I threw up every morning for 3 months, thought I was dying. Turned out I was just making life. Clara's eyes stung. I wish William could see this. He can. Somewhere. Ruth took her hand. And he's smiling. That evening, Clara told Jesse. She waited until Eli was asleep until the cabin was quiet and they were alone by the fire. Jesse, I need to tell you something. He looked up from the harness he was mending. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Clara took a breath. I'm pregnant. Jesse went still. Pregnant, he repeated. Yes. We're having a baby. Yes, a baby. Jesse, you're scaring me. He dropped the harness and crossed to her in 2 steps. His hands cupped her face. A baby, he whispered. Our baby. Our baby. His eyes filled with tears. Clara, I never imagined. Neither did I. He pulled her close, his whole body shaking. I'm going to be a father. You already are, to Eli. But this is different. He couldn't finish. Clara held him while he cried, happy tears, healing tears. I love you, she said. I love our family, all of it. I love you too. Jesse pulled back, wiping his eyes. Does Ruth know? She was the first one I told. And Eli. We can tell him tomorrow. Jesse laughed, watery and joyful. He's going to lose his mind. Probably. He's been asking for a brother for months. I know. What if it's a girl? Then she'll have the most protective big brother in Wyoming. Jesse smiled. I can't believe this is my life. Believe it. He kissed her, then slow and deep and full of promise. Thank you, he whispered against her lips. For what? For saving me, for loving me, for giving me everything I never knew I needed. Clara smiled. You've given me just as much. Then we're even. We're family. That's better than even. They held each other by the fire, dreaming of the future they'd build together. Winter came again. A full year since Jesse had stumbled into Clara's life bleeding and broken. Now he sat at the head of the table carving a turkey, while Eli bounced in his seat and Ruth pretended to be annoyed by the noise. Clara watched them from the kitchen doorway, her hand resting on the swell of her belly. You going to stand there all day? Ruth called. Food's getting cold. Clara smiled and joined her family. The meal was loud and messy and perfect. Eli talked endlessly about the horse Jesse had promised him for his birthday. Ruth complained about the weather and secretly gave Eli extra helpings of pie. Jesse caught Clara's eye across the table and smiled. After dinner, they gathered by the fire. Tell the story again, Eli demanded. The one about how Pa came to live with us. You've heard it 100 times, Clara said. I want to hear it again. Jesse pulled Eli onto his lap. Well, it was the coldest winter anyone could remember. Snow piled higher than the barn roof. Clara listened as Jesse told their story. He made it sound like an adventure, a fairy tale with a happy ending. But Clara knew the truth. It hadn't been a fairy tale. It had been hard and painful and full of moments where everything could have gone wrong. They'd survived anyway. They'd found each other anyway. That was better than any fairy tale. And then, Jesse concluded, your mama hit the bad man with a candlestick and saved everyone. Eli giggled. Mama's tough. Your mama's the toughest person I know. Clara's eyes met Jesse's across the firelight. Thank you, she mouthed. Always, he mouthed back. Ruth stood stretching. Time for bed. Some of us are too old for all this excitement. Grandma, you're not that old. Flattery will get you everywhere, child. Ruth kissed Eli's head. Good night, everyone. I should go to bed too, Eli said reluctantly. I'll tuck you in. Jesse stood lifting Eli easily. Can you tell me another story? A short one. One short story. Then sleep. They disappeared into Eli's room, and Clara was alone. She sat by the fire listening to the murmur of Jesse's voice, the crackle of the flames, the winter wind outside. A year ago, she'd been alone in this cabin, surviving, but not living. Now she had a husband who loved her, a son who was finally healing, a mother-in-law who'd become her closest friend, a baby growing inside her, a life worth living. The door opened. Jesse returned. He's out, he said softly. That was fast. He was more tired than he wanted to admit. Jesse sat beside her. What are you thinking about? Everything. How much has changed? Good changes. The best changes. Clara leaned into him. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I was just waiting to die. And now I can't wait to live. Jesse's arm tightened around her. I feel the same way. Before I found this place, I was just existing, going through the motions, waiting for something to kill me. And now I have something to live for. He kissed her hair. Several somethings. Clara smiled. 3 somethings. 4 if you count Ruth. She'd hate being counted. She'd secretly love it. They laughed softly together. Jesse. Clara's voice turned serious. Yeah. Do you ever regret it? Coming here? He was quiet for a moment. I regret the pain that brought me here. Thomas, Abigail, the years I wasted running. He paused. But if all that pain led me to you, then maybe it had a purpose. That's a lot of faith for a man who didn't believe in anything. I believe in you. I believe in us. His hand found her belly. I believe in this. Clara covered his hand with hers. I love you, Jesse Hawkins. I love you, Clara Hawkins. Forever. Longer than that. They sat together by the fire, watching the flames dance, listening to the wind sing, feeling the baby kick beneath their joined hands. Outside, the snow fell soft and silent. Inside, a family held each other close. And in the morning, they would rise and work and live, because that was what they did now. That was who they were. Not survivors anymore, just people, living and loving and building something that would last. Clara Whitmore had spent 3 years in darkness. She'd lost her husband, her reputation, her hope. Then a bleeding stranger had stumbled out of a blizzard and everything had changed. Now she was Clara Hawkins, wife, mother, soon to be a mother again. She'd fought for this life, bled for it, nearly died for it. And she'd won. Not because she was special, not because she was lucky, because she'd refused to give up, because she'd chosen hope over despair, love over fear, family over isolation. Because when the world tried to break her, she'd broken back. The fire burned low. Jesse's breathing deepened into sleep. Clara stayed awake a little longer, savoring the moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new sorrows. But tonight, everything was exactly as it should be. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in 3 long years, Clara Hawkins slept without fear. Because she was home. And home, she'd learned, wasn't a place. It was the people who chose to stay.